Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Taylor Clem with IFAS Extension in Alachua County, and I am the Environmental and Community Horticulture Agent as well as the county's Master Gardener Volunteer Coordinator. So today I want to speak to you all about gardening, backyard gardening, vegetable gardening, and how we can grow fruits and vegetables within our backyards, as well as what's happening in some of the other urban or urbanizing areas throughout Alachua County and across the state. So join me today on a presentation as we discuss gardening by the foot. So to start off, I want to show you a series of photos. So I'm going to show you 3 photos, and I want you to kind of determine what are the similarities between them. Here is photo number 1. Here's photo number 2. Here is photo number 3. And here are all 3 photos side by side. What is the similarities between these 3 images? What do you notice? So by looking at these images, you should be able to notice that in the background you see rooftops, you see buildings and skyscrapers. So what we're actually seeing in these 3 images is these are all gardens that are actually on the rooftops of skyscrapers and buildings within urban areas or within our different cities and towns. And that's a common way that we're starting to see agriculture within those urban areas. Unused spaces that typically wouldn't have anything on them, we're starting to rethink how we can use those spaces, and we're turning them into vegetable gardens. There are ways that we can produce fruits and vegetables that's easily accessible for those that live within those areas. I want to show you another series of photos, and I want to see what kind of trends or themes that you see between these 3 images. Here's the first image. Here's the second image. And here is the final image. Here are the 3 images again. What do you notice, or what do you see? What is the common thing between all 3 of them? The image that you see on the far left, it looks like we have some leafy greens and some peppers growing. On the top right, we see some other leafy greens growing. It looks like they're growing from some pipes along a fence. And on the image on the bottom right, you're seeing plants that seem to be stacked up on top of one another. So what we have in these images, these are what we call soilless agriculture. So there is no soil with any of these systems. They're different hydroponics or aquaponics systems that we use where we don't use traditional soil, but actually we use nutrient-rich water that just cycles and circles and circles, and it allows those plants to uptake those nutrients in the water, and then they grow from there. So today's goal, after we spend our time together, is I want us to understand the different ways homeowners and community members are growing fruits and vegetables within urban or urbanizing areas. As well as when we're finished, I want you to have an increased knowledge and awareness of urban agriculture programs that might be happening here in Alachua County or other parts of the state. Before we get started, I want us to be able to answer the question, what is urban agriculture and what is urban farming? A lot of times we use them similarly, but go ahead and pause the video and watch this YouTube channel that we have here and as well as in the description of this program. After concluding the video, we can start seeing what urban agriculture or urban farming is. So I want to ask you, where do you see urban agriculture in Alachua County? So sometimes we see them at our schools. We can see them at our local public schools or some of our private schools. We have agriculture or gardening beds. We have community gardens where community members come together and they grow fruits and vegetables as well as some pollinator plants to help with the production of those fruits and vegetables. And some other places, we're just seeing it within our backyards, our neighbors' backyards, and our front yards, wherever people have the ability to start growing food. Are there any other places that you're starting to notice some urban agriculture in Alachua County? Please let us know. So for our first activity, what I'd like us to do is do a quick check online and find an urban farm or farmer. I want us to kind of just investigate and kind of see what people are doing across the United States. I want you to figure out where are they growing, or where are they located, what are they growing, and how are they growing those fruits and vegetables. This could be a great way for us to start learning some innovative ways people are growing fruits and vegetables within urban areas that are outside the traditional agriculture where we're seeing like farms and farm fields. So we learned a little bit about urban agriculture and urban farming, and we started to investigate what are some of the different ways that we're seeing urban agriculture throughout Alachua County, or other things that people are doing across the country to help grow fruits and vegetables in a unique way, especially within those urban areas. But one of the most common ways that we can grow fruits and vegetables is just within our backyard. So I want us to talk a little bit about backyard gardening. So backyard gardening, I want us to be able to achieve these two goals when we're done. I want your knowledge and awareness of backyard gardens at homes to increase after completing this part of the discussion, as well as I want us to have an activity at the end where we're able to plan a square foot garden after completing this program, and this square foot garden would be something that you'd be able to install and plan and do in your home landscape. But first, I want us to talk a little bit about backyard gardening and the history of backyard gardening. Look at some of these pictures that you see on this slide, and what are some of the similarities that you see with them, or what do you think of? So from looking at these images, what we're noticing is that they seem like they're posters, they look a little bit older, but you can see like plant a victory garden, sow the seeds of victory, or Uncle Sam says garden to cut food cost. So a lot of this comes from what we call our victory gardens. Victory gardens primarily started in World War II to help offset food shortages associated with soldiers being overseas. So homeowners or anybody across the country, they were growing fruits and vegetables in their backyard to help bring them into their own homes. This was part of the war effort at home to help support the troops that were overseas. So to learn more about Victory Garden, go ahead and pause this video and watch the YouTube link listed below. This is going to kind of give us a little bit more introduction of what Victory Gardens were, and this is actually, again, film is actually recorded at the National World War II Museum in Louisiana, New Orleans. So check it out. So we got to dive a little deeper into what victory gardens are, and we learned a lot of great information. You know, it was a great way where people were growing their own fruits and vegetables in their backyard, and we're actually starting to see that has always been a continuing tradition for a lot of Americans over the years. I myself grew up learning how to garden in what was a victory garden that was created during the war effort. It was my grandfather's garden, and he just maintained it and kept maintaining it, and he maintained it all the way up until about 10 years ago. And it was a big garden. That's where I learned how to do all my vegetable gardening when I was growing up. But there's some different ways that we can start to plan and organize our gardens in our yards, and that is through the use of square foot gardening. So when we look at these pictures that we see on the screen, you can see all like the little lattice or wood strips that are laid out across the beds. Each one of those little squares that's created in those raised beds are actually 1 square foot. And we can use that square foot to help organize and plan our garden. So to help prepare our square foot garden, here's some of the steps that we needed to go through in order to start that new vegetable garden that we want to do within our yards. First is we want to find a location. We want to deal with soil preparation as well as soil testing. Third is to plan. Fourth is plant your seeds, plant your plants and sow your seeds. And the fifth one is to monitor plants for tastiness. So let's go ahead and jump into the first one, siting. So whenever we want to plant a garden, we want to make sure that it has all the adequate resources to make sure that our plants are successful, happy, and healthy within the landscape. So when we think about a vegetable garden, if you want to plant a vegetable garden, what are some of the most important resources that you think your plants are going to need to grow? Go ahead and think about that for a second and see what kind of notes you can jot down or some of your ideas. So after writing some notes, there are a few things I think you could have listed. One of the first and most important ones is sunlight. You're going to have to find a place in your landscape that gets the most sun throughout the day. So is it in your backyard, your side yard, your front yard? Where in your landscape are you going to get upwards of 6 hours minimum throughout the day? Next, so plants need a lot of sun. They also need some water to make sure that they grow happy and healthy. So it's important to think about, where are your water sources? Are you going to be irrigating your vegetable beds with like a hose from a hose bib, or are they going to be through some type of irrigation system that you have set up? So it's going to be important to think about where you have access to water, and can you easily get water to those vegetable gardens to make sure that they're watered adequately throughout the growing season. So those food and water, those are going to be the biggest ones that we need to concern ourselves with. The third one is space. How much space do you have available? You can grow a lot of food in a 2-foot by 2-foot bed, but if you want to expand on your vegetable garden, you got to think of, how big of an area do I need to make sure that I can have the tastiest, biggest, best vegetable garden that I can grow, or that I comfortably want to grow. So here's some of the other additional things we need to think about. Is find the area around the home. We need 6 hours of sun. Good soil drainage. So our plants, they really like to have water, but they don't like to hold on to that water too long. So we need to make sure that excess water can kind of drain through the soil. Close to water source, and then as well as thinking about where that building and prepping site is going to be. Can it be easily set up and built? So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about soil preparation and testing. So in order to have a healthy soil for your vegetable garden, we need to make sure is what works best for our plants. So our plants need to make sure that they can absorb nutrients, have a little bit of ability to hold on to water, not too much, in order that those plants can grow and be happy and healthy. So a healthy soil is going to help lead to healthy plants. So in Florida, we have sandy soils all over the place. So that's why and sandy soils aren't the best soil for a vegetable garden. So that's why we have so many raised beds, is because we have the ability to fill those raised beds with the soil that we either build or create to help make sure that we can have the soil that's best for moisture retention and control, as well as helps hold on to those nutrients a little bit better. So to help improve soil, we can always add soil amendments. This helps us increase the available nutrients to the plants that's within the soil. It can help improve soil drainage. And as well as we can help build with some additional we can help build that soil with additional organic material, manure, or even cover crops. So some of the plants or other things that we can add into the soil help always build the soil to help make sure that it's healthy and strong for us to build our raised beds. Next is to plan. Once you have like the size of your bed, you know what size that you want it to be, it's important to start thinking about, how do you want to grow the different plants within your garden. So when we do a square foot garden, we know that certain plants have the ability to fill certain amounts of square footage. So if we have 1 square foot in our garden, I know that I can plant upwards of 16 carrots in 1 square foot. But if I was going to grow like a head of lettuce, I might only be able to grow 4 or sometimes even 1. So it's important to start thinking about, if you want to plant different fruits and vegetables, how much space do they need? And that's where the square foot gardening is really, really helpful, because it allows us to kind of determine, with the space that we have, how many types of certain plants can we put within the landscape or within our garden. It's also really important to think about rotations. How do you rotate your plants? You never want to put the same plant in the same place over and over again, because you'll end up having what we call a nematode issue. Those are tiny little microscopic worms that can end up causing some damage to your plants, and it can actually prevent some of those vegetables and fruits from growing within the garden. So some of the things that we want to think about when we're planting a garden is, we'll just draw a garden plan. Plan seasonally. How do the seasons change throughout the year, and what kind of plants can we grow? In the description of this program, as part of the resources, we actually have a gardening guide for you, which includes a calendar of what plants and you can grow at certain times of year and when you can plant them as seeds within your garden. But it's also important to know is, as you plant things, it's really good to know like what you planted, where you planted it, the date that you planted it, just so you have a good record to track those plants within your garden. But also think about those amounts of plants per square foot. We're actually going to include another resource in the description of this program that actually has a really good chart that says, if you want this plant, this is how many of those seeds or starts that you can plant within that single square foot. So we can think about things about lettuce. It might require one per square foot, or you might be able to do 4 per square foot. But carrots and onions, you can plant substantially more. Carrots upwards of 16 per square foot, and onions you can do upwards of 6 to 8 per square foot. So it allows you to start to think of, what can I plant within my garden, and at what times and how much. But then once you start drawing out what your garden is going to look like, what you want to plant, it's important to also think about, what are the list of supplies that you're going to need. Trowels, gloves, safety goggles, the different seeds and transplants, other safety equipment included, or maybe fertilizers, how to make sure you're fertilizing, or how to manage pests within the landscape. So it's important to start thinking about, what are the materials and supplies that you'll need in order to manage your garden successfully. And then once you have that plan, it's time to begin planting. So begin planting, that's one of the most exciting times when we have our vegetable gardens, because we're starting to see our garden take shape. And we're getting to that point where we can start to see our plants start to grow. So it's important to think that there's different ways that we can plant plants within our garden. So the traditional method is we can sow seeds. So we can get little packets of seeds and we can plant them within rows or within the square feet of our garden. But it's also important that we can know that we can also buy transplants. So transplants are already some of those plants. They can be upwards of 8 to 12 weeks old, but they've already started. Those transplants, we call them transplants or starts. You can put those within your garden as well, and it can make the production a little bit quicker for your vegetable garden. But you could choose this based off of availability, and at certain times of the year we have more success with starts versus seeds, or we can have more success with the seed versus one of those starts or transplants. So once you plant your garden, it's important to monitor for tastiness. So tastiness, this is just, make sure that you're having a happy, healthy garden. You can't just plant your garden and just forget it. This is going to be the most important part of managing your entire vegetable garden. So I say monitor for tastiness because it's that point where you're making sure that your garden is happy, so you have tasty food at the end. So what you can see here on the image, this is actually what I say is public enemy #1 of our vegetable gardens. This is a tomato hornworm. You can tell by the big piercing horn on their butt. But you can see that, this might not look too dangerous, but this little guy can come in and he can completely destroy your tomato plants within a matter of days. So it's important that we always monitor our vegetable gardens. Ideally, you do it every single day, but every few days can be really nice, because if you can catch an issue with a pest or a disease early, it's easy to manage it before it gets out of hand. And you can always reach out to our office, because we can help you with that diagnosis and trying to determine what's the best way to manage the issues that you have in the landscape. Because there's not always a one-size-fits-all solution, but as long as we stay on top of it, we can always make sure that our plants are happy and healthy when at the time of harvest, and we have a tasty harvest that we can take into our kitchen or we can deliver to our neighbors. But once everything's planted, make sure you water the plants regularly, but don't overwater. Check soil pH periodically and watch for nutrient deficiencies. Are the plants getting enough of the nutrients that they need? And we usually could see that by seeing discoloration of the leaves. Where typically you want a dark green leaf, you might see a leaf that has green, but also it might be yellowing or might be yellow veins on it. So those can be signs of different nutrient deficiencies. But manage pests appropriately. What are the best ways that we can manage pests? And as well as think about planting year-round. How can you change your plants throughout the season to always make sure that you have a very productive, happy, healthy garden? So to learn more about square foot gardening, go ahead and pause this video and click on the link below, or click on the link what's in the resources of the program. And this is a great way to learn a little bit more about square foot gardening, as well as preparing a square foot garden. So now that you've learned a little bit about square foot gardening, I just want to talk about some unique, fun alternatives to ways that we can grow fruits and vegetables within our yards, especially if we don't have the space to have a big raised garden bed. So one way that's very productive, or it's really fun to do, is container gardens. So if you don't have a landscape, or say you live in a townhome, an apartment, a condo, and you just don't have that space to have a raised bed, these container gardens are great. You can plant them with herbs and spices, different fruits and vegetables, and you can still grow them year-round. Rather than just having a raised bed, you're just growing it in fun, different colored pots and size containers. Secondly, this is a hydroponic system. So sometimes if you have minimal square foot, this is a great way that you can grow some additional fruits or vegetables. Primarily vegetables works best with these systems within your landscape around your home. So what you're seeing in the image is you're seeing a zigzag or snaking pattern of that blue pipe. And all there is those little holes that are drilled into the pipe, and those little transplants of that leafy green, they're kind of just plugged into there, and you can see the hose at the very top. That's where the nutrients of that water kind of just flows through that pipe, and it works its way down the pipe, and it just gets recycled and circulated up to the top. Or you could do what we call foodscapes. So say you don't have a space for a raised bed, but you do have a large landscape where you have a bunch of ornamental plants. A lot of those vegetables and fruits that we can grow within our yard, they have amazing ornamental quality. They look beautiful. So there is nothing that prevents you from planting them into your normal landscape bed. So you can see in this image, there's a lot of different plants in here that are providing food. So you can see corn, there's some bananas, as well as there's some different herbs, like I see some lemongrasses. But you could think about this food in this way as well, as how can I put some of these fruits and vegetables in my garden, and I just treat them as an ornamental plant. They can be treated as like an annual and perennial, and then you can just harvest them when they're done growing. So that's a fun alternative way to growing fruits and vegetables, is we're just bringing them back into that ornamental landscape, or we're bringing them into that ornamental landscape rather than just putting them into those raised beds. So what I want us to do last is I want you to be able to plan your own square foot garden. Go ahead and get a sheet of paper and sketch out your own garden. What would you like to grow throughout the year? Make that plan. You can start off with just like a 2 foot by 2 foot, so it'll give you 4 little square foot cells, or you can draw something a little bit bigger and scale it up. Make it, how big of a garden do you want? But use the resources that you have within the resource links of this video, and look at those different plants. What would you like to grow? What would you like to plant, and how much? So go ahead and start sketching out your own square foot garden that you would like to see within your landscape. So at the conclusion, I think it's important that we talk about how do we understand the different ways homeowners and community members are growing fruits and vegetables in urbanizing areas. So we talked about urban agriculture and farming, as well as we talked about backyard gardening and square foot gardening. So I think now you should have a really good understanding of what's happening within our community, and you're very knowledgeable, or starting to be very knowledgeable on ways that you could start doing gardening within your own landscape. So always feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Dr. Taylor Clem, and reach out to me with this contact information, my email, my phone number with the county extension office. If you or your parents have any questions on the best way to manage your backyard garden or your fruits and vegetables that you're growing. Thank you very much.